Hi, my name's Fursa. I'm a virtual production supervisor and the founder of VP Toolkit. Before we started working on larger productions, it all began with a projector and a bootcamped iMac that we used to do our first virtual production tests. I thought that this proved that virtual production could actually be done at any level. In this video series, I'm going to try and show you the techniques that I use on larger productions, but at an indie level so that you can use virtual production in your projects. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up a virtual production studio with a projector and a laptop. This is for indie filmmakers, streamers, and anybody that wants to learn the fundamentals of virtual production. So here's a list of what I'm using in this video. I'm just going to pop it on the screen here. So I'll be using the VP Toolkit plugin, but I'm also going to show you how to do it with just Unreal Engine. Let's get started. Let's talk about filming with Projector as a background. So the key to getting virtual production to look correct is getting the highlights of the environment to match the highlights of your real set, as well as the shadows of the environment to match the real shadows that your light is spilling onto your talent or props. The way we do this is we balance the exposure of our camera with the output of our LED wall or projector or screen, and then we make sure that no lights are spilling onto that wall, lifting the contrast ratios or lifting the shadows of that background. This is extremely hard to fix in post and will require learning a new skill of controlling light to be able to work with a projector like this. You want to use grids, flags, duvetine, and any other clever way of blocking your lights from spilling onto your background and lifting those shadows. Take a look at my lighting setup. My key light has a grid on it and is pointing down, as well as has a skirt, which is keeping it from spilling onto the background and lifting my shadows. I have another small light filling in over here that is blocked by a 5-in-1 reflector. And then all of my lights have grids on them, as well as other control elements around them to keep the light from bouncing around the room. I also blacked out all of the windows in my apartment, and there's no other lights on in the house. The only light that is in my studio right now is coming from my lights that are very specific to what I need for lighting. You'll want to take this into consideration when you plan for a virtual production, whether it's on LED or on a projector setup. So my projector is 3000 lumens, which is not very bright. That means that I had to open up the stop of the camera using a fairly low t-stop of 2.4. So that means that I have a lot of ambient light that sits in the room. Let's take a look at it using our false color. So this is a Atomos monitor, and then you can see that what false color does, it takes the exposure values of what the image is in nits and then maps them to different colors. Here's what the colors equal in nits. And then we can use this. So if you see the light to the right of our little robot guy back there, you can see that's very bright. That's reaching 85 to 93. So that's registering on our camera as an actual light or something very bright. Similar to this reflector that's behind me here, that's at about 83 to 84. And then this little area above here, you can actually see that that's hitting red. So that's 94 to 100. Something in our environment that actually lives in our environment that would be a real light would be in these ranges, because generally when you point a camera at a light, it's very bright. One of the biggest mistakes that I see with virtual productions is people not getting these highlights to that range. You have to adjust the exposure of the camera and the brightness of your LED wall. I recommend making your LED wall very bright and then using ND in your camera. But with a projector setup, we don't really have that option. We also want to make sure that we're saving our shadows. You can see the dark spots on the robot guy, and you can see that they're similar to what is actually on my hand as shadows. Now I have brighter spots because I'm actually in a light and he is a dark material. but where my shadow sits is around him. The rest of the image is much darker. I'm wearing a black shirt that actually renders as black. Now this is something that we'll be able to push that extra little bit in a color grade, but you want to try and get this as close as possible. If I was using an LED wall, I would try and have these shadows almost black. What's really important is to make sure that there's shadow data. So if we go into our environment and we make this even darker, we can see that we no longer have shadow data. We start to lose all of the detail in our character. You generally don't want solid black shadows in your environment. So I'm going to set that back to negative 4.0, and you'll see at no place in our environment are we losing any detail. All right, let's take a look at what it does to the image when we adjust the frustum exposure. So let's make it a little darker. You can see we start to lose some shadows, but we still retain our highlights. And let's make it a little brighter. Now this might actually work because we retain our shadow detail. A little trick is you can turn it to negative 20 and it will go black. I'm going to try negative 3.5. I like where that sits. You can see that there's actually a spot where there's a reflection on the floor showing up as 94 to 100 on our meter. So that means that it is registering as a very bright light, which is what we want from our environment, to create that gap between the highlight and shadow range, and that's how we get it to look more realistic. Let's get foggy. Also, using atmospheric effects like fog can change the contrast ratios of your background and make it so that you have more ambient light in the room. Now, if you're using a background that has already lifted shadows or has fog in it or smoke, then you might be able to get away with this, but you want to be careful that you're matching the contrast ratios of your background so that your background and your real environment blend. I'm Ian Fursa with VP Toolkit, and if you like this content, please subscribe to our channel. We also offer virtual production services, and make sure to check out our plugin. It's a real lifesaver on set. Now go film something. Film something cool. Tag us. And I'll see you in the next one.